What if libido weren't taboo in Islam? What if, contrary to popular belief, Allah never condemned sexual desire, but rather taught how to control, sublimate, and honor it? In a world where sexuality is either overly exposed or shamefully repressed, it's crucial to return to the basics. What does Allah really say about libido? Today, we hear all sorts of things. Some claim that Islam advocates austerity and the rejection of carnal pleasure. Others assert that desire is necessarily a weakness or a temptation to be avoided. But very few take the time to open the Quran or authentic hadiths to understand what the Creator Himself says on the subject. In this video, we will explore straightforwardly, but with modesty and respect, the divine vision of sexual desire. We will examine the verses, prophetic teachings, and words of scholars that show that libido is not a curse, but a force that Islam wisely manages. This subject is crucial. If misunderstood, it can lead to guilt, frustration, or excess. If understood well, it can become a means of worship, balance, and fulfillment within the framework God intended. The goal here is not to shock or provoke. It is to break the clichés, break the unnecessary silence, and return to the authentic sources. It is Allah, not cultural traditions or social prejudices, to whom we want to listen. So, what does Allah really say about libido? 1. Why talk about libido in Islam? Today, the issue of libido is everywhere. It is omnipresent in the media, advertising, social media, TV series, and popular discussions. Sexual desire is no longer just a private aspect of human beings. It has become a commodity, a marketing tool, a consumer object, a subject of obsession. In this ultra-sexualized context, two extremes appear, including within Muslim societies or religious families. On the one hand, excessive exposure to sexuality, often distorted, pushes young people, even children, to be confronted at a very early age with images and discourses that arouse or disturb their libido. On the other hand, in response, some circles choose total silence, even denial. The subject is avoided. It is considered dirty, shameful, or even haram to discuss it, even in an educational or religious setting. The result? Confusion, guilt, mismanagement of desire, sometimes even serious abuses. In many Muslim families, libido is a taboo subject. It's not discussed with children, adolescents are not prepared for puberty, and marriage is not discussed openly. Young people are left to fend for themselves, facing their desires, in a world that sends them contradictory messages. And when they make mistakes or ask questions, the response is often shame or repression, never support. However, this silence does not stem from Islam, but from cultural traditions, fears, or lack of deep religious education. Islam, however, recognizes the existence of sexual desire. It neither deifies it nor is it taboo. It governs it with balance, wisdom, and humanity. Allah created man with a spiritual soul, but also with a body endowed with urges. The Prophet Muhammad made it clear that desire is natural and can become a source of reward if expressed within a lawful framework, such as marriage. He never taught to deny it, but to control it intelligently. Talking about libido in an Islamic context is not westernizing the religion. It means returning to the roots, understanding that this subject concerns the purity of the soul, the stability of the couple, the education of children, and even the prevention of many social ills. Pornography, fornication, addictions, unjustified divorces, domestic violence, etc. If we do not speak of libido in the words of Allah and His Messenger, others will do so in empty or deviant terms, and hearts will turn to these false benchmarks. In summary, libido exists. It is natural. It must be understood, channeled, and respected. Islam has clear, humane, and spiritual answers on this subject. So, rather than running away or remaining silent, it's time to listen to what our religion really says. It's essential for personal, marital, and community balance. 2. Islamic definitions and terminology. Understanding the words to understand the message. To fully grasp what Islam says about libido, it is essential to begin with the key words used in the Quran and Sunnah on this subject. Misunderstandings often arise from a misunderstanding of terms or from their approximate translation. Here are the essential concepts to know. 1. Shahwa, a shahwa, desire. The word shahwa refers to intense desire, often linked to sensuality or physical attraction, but not exclusively. In the Quran, it is used to refer to the pleasures of earthly life, of which sexual desire is a part. Allah says in Surah Al-Imran 3:14, "The love of things which they desire has been made beautiful to mankind, women, children, hoarded gold and silver, purebred horses, livestock and land." Here, shahwa is recognized as a natural attraction that human beings feel. It is not condemned in itself. What is problematic is following it blindly, without guidance or awareness. 2. Nafs, a nafs, the soul, self. The nafs is a central concept in Islam. It represents the human soul, but also the inner self, with its various inclinations. It can be elevated or corrupted, depending on how it is cultivated. Scholars distinguish several levels of nafs, including nafs al-amara, the soul that incites evil, nafs al-lawama, the soul that blames itself, nafs al-mutama'inna, the soul at peace. The nafs plays a direct role in managing the libido. A libido given over to nafs al-amara becomes a source of sin. A libido controlled by a disciplined soul becomes a source of reward. 3. Ifa, al-ifa, chastity, self-control. Ifa is a noble term in Islamic spirituality. It refers to restraint, modesty, and the control of desires, especially sexual desires. It is not the negation of desire, but its ethical mastery. A man or woman who practices ifa is not one who is insensitive to desire, but one who channels it with dignity. Ifa is a precious quality, evoked in the Quran and the Hadiths, and valued by all great scholars. Natural desire versus uncontrolled desire. Islam does not demonize desire. It recognizes that it is a creation of Allah, present in every human being. The Prophet himself, as a perfect example, was married, loved his wives, and taught the path of balance. What is blamed is not libido, but uncontrolled libido, the kind that leads to illicit behavior, obsession, or spiritual neglect. In other words, natural desire, recognized, embraced, and channeled, is an act of worship if placed within the framework intended by Allah. Uncontrolled desire, blindly pursued to the detriment of faith and limits, equals a source of sin. 3. What the Quran says about desires: recognition, framework, wisdom. Contrary to what some believe, the Quran does not deny human libido. It does not condemn it. It fully recognizes it as a natural reality of human beings. But it frames it with divine wisdom. setting protective boundaries and pointing out the path to balance. Sexual desire is neither a disease nor a weakness. It is a creation of Allah, a force He has placed in human beings, as a test, but also as a blessing when managed within the limits set by Him. Key verses from the Quran on sexuality and desire. Surah Al-Mu'minun 23, 5-7. And those who guard their chastity, except with their wives or their slaves in their possession. For in that they are not to be blamed. But those who seek beyond these limits, they are the transgressors. Quran 23, 5-7. Analyses. These verses clearly show that sexual desire is recognized and accepted within a specific framework. Marriage, or in the historical context, with female captives, which is no longer applicable today. The Quran does not say, do not have desire, but express it in what is lawful. Tafsir Ibn Kathir. He explains that this verse is proof that sexual intercourse is not blameworthy in itself, provided it is practiced within the legal framework. Seeking to satisfy one's libido outside these limits is to depart from obedience to Allah. Al-Qurtubi adds, the word used for transgressors, adun, indicates that this is not just a reprehensible act, but a willful transgression of Allah's limits. This proves that the marital framework is not only a permission, but a protection for the individual and society. Surah An-Nur 24, 30-31. Tell the believers to lower their gaze and guard their chastity. That is purer for them. Indeed, Allah is aware of what they do. Quran 24:30. And tell the believing women to lower their gaze and guard their chastity. Quran 24-31. Analysis. These verses demonstrate a dual strategy for managing desire. First, avoid what unnecessarily excites the libido, lowering the gaze. Second, protect one's body from what is illicit, maintaining one's chastity. This is not a logic of repression, but of discipline. The Quran recognizes the power of shahwa, desire, but teaches us to channel it from its source, the gaze, the environment, the mind. Tafsir Ibn Kathir specifies, lowering the gaze is averting one's eyes from what is forbidden, and this protects the heart from trouble, then the soul from acting out. Thus, the Quran links the control of desire to the gaze, for the gaze is the gateway to the heart. Libido is not forbidden, but it must be directed. Surah Ar-Rum 30:21. And among His signs is that He created for you from among yourselves mates, that you may find tranquility in them. And He has placed between you affection and mercy. Quran 30:21. Analysis. This verse is often cited to speak of marital love, but it also contains an implicit and powerful sexual dimension. Marriage is not just a contract or cohabitation. It is an emotional, physical, and even carnal refuge. The word sakina, tranquility, indicates a deep rest, which includes the physical serenity brought about by lawful, gentle, and respectful sexuality. Affection, mawada, refers to visible love, including in intimate gestures. Mercy, rama, recalls tenderness, compassion, and listening to the other, essential elements of healthy intimacy. Tafsir As-Sa'di says, Allah has made the marital bond a source of peace for the hearts, pleasure for the bodies, and support for faith. Other passages to remember Surah Al-Baqarah 187. They are a garment for you, and you are a garment for them. Spouses are described as mutual protection, including from desires. Surah Al-A'raf, 789. It is He who created you from a single being, and from it He created His wife, that He may find rest in her. The sexual bond is evoked as the origin of peace and union. 4. Words of the Prophet on libido. Between nature, balance, and spirituality. After examining what the Quran says about sexual desire, it is essential to turn to the Sunnah of the Prophet, for he is the practical model of lived Islam. His words, behaviors, and recommendations show us how to manage libido with wisdom, dignity, and faith. Unlike some cultures that associate sexual desire with something dirty or shameful, the Prophet always approached it as a natural human reality, to be channeled, not stifled. Chapter 1. Marriage as protection against passions. One of the clearest and most powerful teachings on libido is found in this hadith. O young men, whoever among you can afford it, let him marry, for that is more likely to lower the gaze and preserve chastity. And whoever cannot, let him fast, for it acts as a protection. Authentic hadith, Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim. Analysis. The Prophet explicitly recognizes sexual desire, especially among young people. He encourages marriage as a natural, lawful, and spiritual solution to channeling libido. He proposes fasting as a temporary barrier for those who cannot yet marry. This hadith teaches us that sexual desire is not a problem in itself. It is its mismanagement that is. And Islam offers concrete, realistic, and accessible solutions. 2. Sexual intercourse as charity. Sadaqah. Here is a very profound, often overlooked hadith in which the Prophet completely overturns the materialistic or sinful view of sexuality. In the fact that one of you has sexual intercourse with his wife, there is a charitable act, sadaqah. The companions, astonished, said, O Messenger of Allah, one of us satisfies his desire and receives a reward for it. He replied, See, if he were to do it in a prohibited way, would he not be sinful? In the same way, if he does it in a permissible way, he is rewarded for it. Sahih Muslim. Analysis. This hadith affirms that sexual desire is not only permissible in marriage, it becomes a form of worship. Allah rewards marital pleasure, provided it is practiced within a halal framework, with respect and love. This saying of the Prophet demystifies sexuality by bringing it back into the realm of spirituality. This means that a well-directed libido becomes a path to Allah, not an obstacle. 3. The refutation of monasticism. Some people believe that to draw closer to Allah, one must renounce sexuality, cut oneself off from the world, or live in perpetual celibacy. The Prophet firmly rejected this idea. By Allah, I am indeed the most pious among you and the most fearful of Allah, but I fast and eat, I pray and sleep, and I marry women. Whoever turns away from my sunnah is not one of me. Sahih al-Bukhari. Analysis. The Prophet affirms his piety while claiming a balanced life, including his marital relations. He rejects the idea that absolute chastity, monastic style, is better than marriage. True piety in Islam is not denying human needs, but honoring them responsibly. It must therefore be understood that prolonged voluntary celibacy, out of religious zeal, is contrary to the prophetic example. The Prophet taught that the complete man is one who balances his faith with his natural needs. 4. The importance of satisfying one's spouse. The Prophet did not limit himself to speaking of desire in terms of prohibitions and self-control. He also emphasized the importance of mutual satisfaction in the couple, including intimacy. Let not one of you fall upon his wife like an animal. Let him first speak affectionately. Reported by Al-Dailami. Although this hadith is classified as weak, it is supported by the general spirit of the Sunnah, which encourages good behavior, gentleness, and consideration in intimacy. What it means? Sexual desire should not be selfish. Islam encourages respect for the pleasure of others within a humane and compassionate view of sexuality. 5. Sexual ethics and spirituality, mastering desire to elevate oneself. In the minds of many, sexuality is perceived as something low, animal, incompatible with spirituality. Yet, Islam teaches exactly the opposite. Sexuality, when mastered and placed within the framework intended by Allah, becomes an act of purity, responsibility, and even worship. Libido is not an obstacle to faith. It is a field of effort, a testing ground where one can either fall or rise. 1. The link between mastered desire and spiritual elevation. Allah has created in human beings a strong desire for certain things: food, power, material goods, and of course sexuality. These desires are natural, but they can also become chains if we follow them blindly. The Prophet said, "Paradise is surrounded by painful things, and hell is surrounded by passions." Sahih Muslim. Explanation. This hadith shows that resisting certain desires is part of the path to paradise. This does not mean denying desire, but rather taming, channeling, and controlling it. And it is precisely in this effort that spiritual elevation is born. Controlling sexual desire is a sign of religious maturity. The more an individual develops their ability to control their passions, the closer they become to Allah. The Quran values this quality. As for whoever fears appearing before his Lord and protects his soul from passion, hawa, then paradise is his refuge. Surah An-Nazi'at 79, 41. 2. Fasting as a tool for controlling desires. The Prophet, in the hadith we saw previously, recommends fasting to those who cannot marry. And whoever cannot marry, let him fast, for it acts as a protection. Sahih al-Bukhari. Why fast? Because it weakens the passions, calms the body, and recalls the presence of Allah. By voluntarily abstaining from what is normally permissible, eating, drinking, intercourse, the believer develops inner discipline. The same discipline will be useful in controlling sexual urges outside of the lawful framework. The month of Ramadan, in particular, is a collective exercise in self-control. Not only do we abstain from what is unlawful, but also from what is halal, to strengthen our willpower. Fasting then becomes a shield, junah, against sin, as the Prophet said. 3. Sexual pleasure is permitted and encouraged within the lawful framework. Contrary to the idea that religion is against pleasure, Islam encourages sexual pleasure, provided it is halal, that is, within the framework of marriage. The Quran clearly states this. Your wives are for you a field of cultivation. Go to your field as you wish. Surah Al-Baqarah, 223. This verse affirms that husband and wife have a mutual right to pleasure, and that their intimate union is honored, not despised. The Prophet himself valued shared pleasure, marital tenderness, and consideration for each other in intimacy. He even explained that this intercourse becomes a rewarding act when it is performed with sincere intention, love, and respect. In the intimate relationship of one of you with his wife, there is charity, Sahih Muslim. This vision radically transforms our understanding. Libido is not an obstacle to faith. It can be a path to Allah. It is valued when channeled with nobility. 6. Refuting misconceptions about libido in Islam. One of the greatest obstacles to a healthy understanding of libido in Islam is not the revealed texts, but the misconceptions and cultural distortions that circulate. These erroneous beliefs prevent many Muslims, young and old, from living their faith and their human nature in a balanced way. Here are 3 common and toxic misconceptions that absolutely must be corrected. No, Islam does not demonize libido. Many believe that Islam rejects sexual desire, that it must be killed, that it is shameful, or that it is always a source of sin. False. Islam does not demonize libido. It recognizes it as a creation of Allah. It is part of human nature. The Prophet said, "In the sexual intercourse of one of you, there is charity." Sahih Muslim. This means the desire can even be a source of reward when expressed in halal. The Quran itself speaks of the love of desired things, shahawat, as something natural. Surah Al-Imran 3:14. It is not desire that is blamed, but rather the act of following it without limits. Libido is neither impure nor diabolical. It is a human energy which must be directed with awareness. Allah does not ask us to extinguish it, but to control it with piety. 2. Celibacy is not superior to marriage in Islam. Some believe that remaining celibate for Allah is a superior form of piety, that denying oneself sexuality is more spiritual. This idea comes from influences outside Islam: Christian monasticism, ascetic philosophies. But it is rejected by the Sunnah. The Prophet said, "Whoever turns away from my Sunnah is on one of me." Sahih al-Bukhari. This hadith was recited in response to companions who wanted to fast every day, pray all night, or never marry. He reminded them that marriage is part of his prophetic tradition. Celibacy may be tolerated temporarily for specific reasons, studies, financial difficulties, etc. But it should never be idealized as being purer than marriage. Marriage is the framework intended by Allah to channel desire, create a family, and move toward Him. 3. No, it is not haram to talk about sexuality with modesty. In many Muslim families or circles, the mere mention of the word sexuality is perceived as indecent, even haram. The result? Silence, ignorance, embarrassment, and taboo. And young people turn to the internet to find answers, often in the wrong places. Yet the Prophet spoke about sexuality to his companions, men and women, with modesty, respect, and clarity. Sahabiyas like Sulaim asked intimate questions, and the Prophet answered without judgment or shying away. Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, said, "What a noble woman Sulaim was. She was not embarrassed to ask the Prophet questions about religion." Sahih Muslim. The silence surrounding this subject is not Islamic, it's cultural. Islam encourages modest, spiritual, and enlightened sexual education to prevent abuse and protect society. 7. Practical examples in married life. What the Sunnah teaches us. The Prophet's teachings on sexuality are not limited to abstract words. They are also expressed in his concrete behavior with his wives. These examples remain a valuable reference today for all Muslim couples who wish to live their intimate relationship with respect and spirituality. What was 1. The Prophet's behavior with his wives. Tenderness, patience, and attention. The Prophet was known for his gentleness and respect toward his wives. He never treated them with harshness or indifference. On the contrary, he regarded them with great kindness. The best among you is the one who is the best to his family, and I am the best among you to my family, reported by At-Tirmidhi. He took the time to talk with his wives, to listen to them, and to share moments of intimacy without haste. He respected their desires and their limits, showing patience. He knew how to alternate between love, respect, and humor, strengthening the bond. This model emphasizes that sexuality in marriage is a sacred space of respect and gentleness, where the well-being of each party matters. 2. The role of consent, intimacy, and mutual respect. Islam emphasizes the importance of mutual consent in marital relations. Contrary to some popular beliefs, sexual intercourse should never be imposed or experienced as a constraint. The Prophet taught that women have rights in marriage, including the right to pleasure and respect. Consent is a fundamental principle, because marriage is a union based on trust and love. Sexuality is also a moment of deep intimacy, requiring patience, communication, and understanding. Mutual respect makes the marital relationship a refuge, a place of peace and support. 3. Practical advice for young people. Marriage, patience, prayer. For young people, particularly those experiencing strong sexual desire, several practical pieces of advice emerge from the Sunnah. Get married as soon as possible, as this allows them to experience sexuality in a lawful and spiritual setting. Be patient when marriage is not yet possible by practicing fasting and prayer. Draw on prayer and spirituality to strengthen their will and keep their heart at peace. Seek sincere and modest information about sexuality in Islam to avoid doubts and misconceptions. Throughout this video, we explored what Allah's message reveals about libido, this powerful and natural desire, inscribed in the heart of every human being. Far from being a source of shame or an obstacle to faith, libido, from an Islamic perspective, is a force to be recognized, harnessed, and sanctified. Summary of key points. Libido is a creation of Allah, a natural aspect of human beings that the Quran mentions without taboo, as a legitimate need and a normal part of life. The Prophet confirmed this reality by promoting marriage as the recommended way to channel this desire, and by reminding us that permissible sexuality is a source of reward. Islamic ethics does not deny sexuality. It regulates it. Marital pleasure is a noble, respectful, and spiritual act. Misconceptions about libido, that it is shameful, must be repressed, or that celibacy is superior to marriage, must be firmly opposed. Controlling desire is a form of taqwa, piety, an effort that elevates the soul toward Allah, not an unbearable deprivation. Communication, respect, and consent in married life are essential for a fulfilling, healthy sexuality in accordance with the Sunnah. Fasting, prayer, and spirituality are powerful tools for those who must manage their urges before marriage or while celibate. The beauty of controlled and sanctified desire. There is great beauty in seeing libido not as a weakness, but as a divine energy that we learn to direct. This control does not mean repression, but respect, balance, and spiritual awareness. Controlled desire is a desire that doesn't possess us, but that we possess. A desire that we embrace wisely, with trust in Allah, and that becomes a means of worship. A call for spiritual sex education in Muslim families. For this beautiful vision to take root, it is urgent that we break the taboos surrounding sexuality in our families, schools, and communities. Sex education must be modest, sincere, and grounded in spirituality. Parents have a crucial role, speaking to their children with respect, answering their questions, and guiding them toward a healthy understanding of desire. It is by teaching this integrated vision of sexuality that we will prepare balanced, responsible generations close to Allah. In conclusion, libido in Islam is not a shameful subject or a burden. It is an essential part of human nature. If understood and lived according to divine guidance, it becomes a powerful lever towards inner peace, sincere love, and closeness to Allah.